Hello friends, in the monthly gardening series of videos, today we will look at the California garden in the month of June. Since we have a lot of things to cover in today's episode, I have listed down all the parts of the video that we will be looking at today. So let's start with a tour of the garden. So the onions are growing well and are continuing to form bulbs. In the next bed we have okra that has grown a little bit taller now. And look at this corn bed. So I dedicated one raised bed to growing corn only, and you can see that it's a jungle out there. The peppers and eggplants are also growing very well, and we will go over all of these vegetables in detail in the later section of the video. And the tomatoes have grown very well too. As you can see, we have made sure that the tomatoes have remained disease-free for the most part, and they're doing pretty well. We have several varieties of tomatoes growing. You can see the yellow tomatoes. There are some red cherry tomatoes, red beefsteak tomatoes as well. So all in all, our tomato bed is doing very well. And moving on to the hyacinth beans. We covered growing this bean in our previous monthly video, and it's grown pretty well. This bed had garlic, which we harvested and replaced that with some bush beans. I also have some peppers and eggplants that are growing in containers towards the corner, as you can see here. So we have some carrots growing. These are the atomic red carrots. We planted them in whiskey barrels and they're growing pretty well and should be ready for harvest very soon. Our pomegranate trees are growing very well this year. Now pomegranates need some chill hours, which means that they need cooler winters in order to produce good fruit. Luckily, we had some good chilly days this winter, and as you can see here, the pomegranate tree is growing well. It's producing a lot of flowers and it's producing a lot of fruit, and we should be able to harvest these pomegranates by around October or November this year. We also have our moringa plants that are growing and flowering like crazy. I hope we get to harvest some pods later during the summer. We have our bitter gourd that's growing in a container. This is the first year I'm growing these in containers after a long time, and they seem to be doing well. As you can see here, the fruit is being formed. The bitter melon, extremely healthy for you. You should try growing this sometime if you haven't already tried it. And moving on to our hyacinth beans, as we saw, growing pretty well. Now hyacinth beans are a very different variety of bean. I have another video where I have covered growing hyacinth beans in complete detail. So this is how it looks like. The pods are quite flat and they taste very different than regular beans. If you haven't tried growing hyacinth bean, give it a shot. It's great when you eat it stir-fried, and if you add some coconut to it, you can make some great dishes with hyacinth beans. We also have some radish that is growing. Now, although it's the summer season, we've had some cooler days, we've had some cloudy days. So all this helps radish to grow well. And as you can see here, this radish has not only grown lovely greens, it has grown several nice stout roots as well. And these should be ready to harvest in about a week or two. And now an update on our grapevine. It has grown pretty tall and sprawled a lot of the area, as you can see here. And this is the Thompson Seedless variety of grapes. And I'm really excited to taste these grapes. They're not ready yet. I did taste a couple and they're still not very sweet. But I'm sure as we get more heat, these grapes will sweeten and become very delicious, and then they're ready for harvest. And now let's look at our harvests. So we harvested a lot of vegetables in June. We planted this garlic back in fall, and This kind of a container works really well to grow garlic. You can grow about 3 or 4 garlic plants in this size of a container. And as you can see here, our harvest looks pretty good. What we will be doing is harvesting these garlic and then keeping them, curing them for about 2 to 3 weeks, after which they will store for quite a long time. And moving on to harvesting our garlic from the raised bed. So as you saw in the beginning of the video, we had the bush beans planted here. So this is where the garlic plants were growing. And this bed has a lot of compost. I tried to put in as much compost as possible for this bed, and it worked out really well. So if you're looking to improve the quality of your soil, one thing that you must absolutely do is add more organic material to your raised beds. We're still harvesting our kale. This dwarf Siberian kale is growing pretty strong, and this might be the last time we are harvesting this kale, because as summer progresses, you're going to get a lot more insects on the kale, which you want to avoid. And as you can see here, the bush beans produced a lot. I'm growing about 4 or 5 plants in this whiskey barrel container, and I found that this is a good way to grow bush beans. So you can grow bush beans not only in raised beds or in the ground. You can grow them in whiskey barrel containers like these. And if you have little helpers, they'll have a lot of fun harvesting these beans. And these bush beans produce a lot. You can harvest a few beans every day and still end up getting a pretty decent harvest from these few plants. So there's our beans harvest, and it looks pretty. And you can harvest this kind of beans for a few more days. And then moving on to our fenugreek harvest. And I've discussed fenugreek in some of my previous videos. It's a great herb to grow. And if you're a woman, it's got great health benefits for you. So it's easy to grow in your garden. You can keep harvesting as the plant produces, or you can just harvest the whole plant. Either ways, you can't go wrong. And if you consume a lot of fenugreek, I'd advise that you plant it in succession. So plant now and harvest in about 4 weeks or so. And in the meanwhile, start another batch, which will again grow into some more fenugreek plants. So this is a bunch of fenugreek. It's extremely healthy, very delicious as well. This is the Chandler strawberry variety. I have discussed growing the Chandler variety in detail in one of my previous episodes. And this is an excellent strawberry variety, very delicious, produces really large strawberries. And as you can see here, they're very red, extremely sweet. And this is one variety of strawberry that I highly recommend that you grow, especially in areas like Southern California, Zone 10. They grow extremely well. I also have a lot of other strawberry varieties growing. I have the Ozark Beauty and I have the Chandler, which you're seeing right here. And strawberries produce extremely well during the summer season. The Ozark Beauty continues to produce through fall, but these are excellent strawberries, great to grow in your garden. And once again, if you have little helpers, they really enjoy harvesting all these vegetables from your garden. So it's nice to introduce them to this hobby. We have a lot of cilantro growing. We do consume a lot of cilantro, and this is one of the easiest herbs to grow in your garden. So if you're thinking about growing cilantro, go ahead and grow it. It's an extremely easy herb to grow. And now moving on to our summer vegetables, which we'll see in detail. We have some more bush beans that we planted in containers, and they're growing pretty well. So you can plant bush beans in these 5-gallon containers, as you see. It's a great option if you don't have large containers. And this is our corn. The corn is growing really well. It's almost like a jungle with these huge corn trees, corn plants that are growing. And we have eggplants. summer vegetables that cannot be missed. Eggplants are an excellent vegetable to grow during the summer, and this variety was given to me by one of my friends, this seed packet. It's called the purple eggplant, and it produces eggplants that are medium to large, some small as well, but not extremely large like the Black Beauty. But nonetheless, it's a great eggplant variety to grow, and no matter what eggplants you're growing in your garden, it's extremely nice to grow your own eggplants because they just taste absolutely delicious. So a summer garden is not complete without peppers, eggplants, and tomatoes. And I'm sure that these are some of your favorite vegetables to grow during the summer. And moving on to our tomatoes, the number one vegetable that everyone wants to grow during the summers, yes, it's tomatoes. We have several varieties of tomatoes growing. This variety is called the ruby tomato, which produces small to medium sized fruits. And this is a very delicious tomato variety. Very juicy as well. And moving on to our next tomato variety, these are cherry tomatoes. I have planted both the ruby and cherry tomatoes next to each other. This is another cherry tomato. Small tomatoes, but they produce a lot. And we also have a lot of yellow tomatoes that are growing. These are the Honey Delight hybrid tomatoes, an extremely prolific variety. I started growing these last year, and compared to the Sun Gold tomato, which is a similar variety of tomato, this produces a lot. Taste wise, it's very close to the Sun Gold, although the Sun Gold is slightly better in taste. And right next to the cherry tomatoes is the Rutgers tomato. This is a heirloom tomato, extremely delicious, produces a small to medium sized fruit. And Rutgers is one tomato variety I would absolutely recommend just for the taste. These tomatoes taste amazing. And I usually do not grow this tomato variety, but I'm growing it this year, and I've been extremely pleased with the results. Although it won't produce a lot of tomatoes like some other tomato varieties, it's absolutely delicious. These are some more Honey Gold tomatoes, Honey Delight tomatoes that are yellow in color, a little bit on the sweeter side. So if you like sweet tomatoes, the Honey Delight is an excellent variety to grow in your garden. And this is how our tomato harvest looks like. We were able to harvest a lot of tomatoes from our tomato bed, and they will keep producing through the end of summer. So as you can see here, absolutely great looking tomatoes and absolutely delicious as well. And our poblano peppers are also doing very well. We will harvest a couple of poblano peppers that have been growing, and peppers are a very nice summer vegetable to grow as well. And poblanos are one of my favorite peppers because they have one of the best balances of heat and taste. And now looking at the new additions to our garden, there is only one new addition, and can you guess this plant? Yes, it's aloe vera. And aloe vera is something that is used to cleanse your body, cleanse your skin. A friend of mine gave me this aloe vera plant, just a small twig of it, and it grew into this really nice plant. So I'm looking forward to growing this, and I'm also looking forward to seeing how this can be used for health purposes. And now the things to do in your garden. So all our viewers are always asking me as to what's the good thing to do in your garden during that month. Well, during the month of June, it's your opportunity to plant tomato plants, not really seeds, but plants, because June is already late into the summer season. So you can buy plants from your garden center and plant it. We are planting this tomato plant in this container, and this plant will produce tomatoes because you still have about 2 to 3 months before it starts getting cooler. So it's a good time to plant your tomatoes if you haven't already started. And we're also planting some peppers. So these 5-gallon containers are great to plant peppers. We are planting some hot peppers, 2 or 3 new varieties that we are trying out this season. So it's a good time to start your peppers as well. And now let's look at some maintenance that you need to do for your summer vegetables. Prune all leaves that look like this so that your plants stay clean and free of diseases. You do not want any foliage touching the bottom part of the soil area, because that's the #1 cause of having a lot of diseases on your plants. So make sure you keep the bottom part of the plant clean, and that will help you avoid a lot of diseases. Now watch for your mint plants, or for that matter any other plant that needs repotting. I found this mint plant wasn't growing very well, and as you look at the plant here, it's severely root bound. I almost had to break open the roots of this plant, and this really doesn't do any justice to the plant. You need to give it some room to grow and to produce more leaves. So what I'm doing here is I'm breaking down these plants into smaller plants and then transplanting it into a newer container. So you can see this square or rectangular shaped container that works great for mint plants. So I'm going to be planting these small mint plants in this container, and this will give them a lot more room to grow. Once it gets a lot more room to grow, they will produce a lot more leaves which you can harvest. So it's a good time to check around your garden, look at plants that have not been repotted. This is the best time to repot them. The temperatures are great. You're going to get very good results if you repot your plants during this time. And I was talking about removing the diseased and dead leaves from your plants. This is an example of rust on your tomato plants. The rust spores will cause these brown spots on your leaves. Now there are 2 ways to deal with this. You can either spray your plants with a fungicide like neem oil. I just prefer to remove the dead leaves and throw them away, the infected leaves I mean, and that will prevent the growth of these spores around the other leaves. So just remove these leaves and throw them. Do not put them in your compost bin, just discard them. So it's a much better option than spraying your plants. Hand pollination is another thing that you need to do, absolutely need to do. Now people ask me how I get so many eggplants and so many tomatoes on my plants, and the answer is I do hand pollinate each and every flower that comes on my tomato plants and my eggplants. As you can see here, the technique is fairly simple. Just use a powered toothbrush and your plants will be hand pollinated. It's also a good time to plant more bush beans. As we discussed, we planted these bush beans in this raised bed, and these will grow through summer. So it's a good time to start planting beans, another round of beans. And if you haven't planted beans yet, this is a good time to plant bush beans as well. So there we have it, folks. That was our monthly gardening series for the month of June. If you like this monthly gardening series, please leave a comment below. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Please do not forget to give us a thumbs up. And if you have any other comments, please leave them below. We'll see you again soon. Happy gardening.